integrate from Retrofit Works, and I'll invite him to make some comments about the types of things that he's doing and what his perspective is on the question of people and skills. Over to you, Russell.
Hi, everybody. Eric, can you hear me?
I can, yes. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me. So I've got quite a few slides, but the plan is for some of them to not spend too much time on them. The idea being that you'll be sent slides afterwards and you can digest them and what have you. So I'm going to give you an overview of Retrofit Works, which is a not-for-profit co-op, which is set up basically because there was no way to help a large number of advocacy type organisations to create a frankly non-existing market, and to help contractors to try and move into a market which frankly didn't have any structure either. It was all on the basis that every home is unique when we first started the model. If we want to get to retrofit at scale across the whole country, the idea was really for us to be able to understand that doing retrofit at scale means giving a householder a decent offer, showing them what's possible with their building, and not a cookie cutter approach to life, which kind of is what the Green Homes Grant really is at the moment. So we're trying to make householders genuinely excited about coming forward and wanting to do this, and contractors to want to do this in a way that they've never been excited about it before. And by owning the cooperative, they own the agenda, and we can all collaborate on that basis. These are 40 houses in Sutton and South London, all of whom had a decent energy assessment carried out. The pie is the size of the annual energy bill. The consistency of that pie is according to the key on the left. So you'll see that every home is completely unique there. Some have big bills, some have small bills. This is all done on the lead up to the Green Deal. So a finance provision for a house that has a very small pie would not be a good sell at all. So it's really trying to come on down on that basis. So mass customization, I think, is the phrase that we like to use to say this is how we want to be able to roll out retrofit. And this is about saying we want to be looking at retrofit in a very different way. Currently, if you want to get something done in your home, you call up Bob the builder. Bob gives you a quote. He does the work very quickly and disappears over the hill and hopes he doesn't have to come back to do any snagging. And wants most of that money before he started as well. That's fine if it's a small amount of work. However, if, like me, when I did my own retrofit 15 years ago, it has to be done in phases because you haven't got all the money at once, or you can't take all the hassle at once, you have to be in a position where maybe that will be done in cycles, and most houses will be done in cycles. Whole house retrofit is not doing the whole house at once. Whole house retrofit is being smart about a plan that's probably implemented over maybe even a decade. So into the diagram here, you're planning the work, and that you cannot be expected to give someone an energy performance certificate and expect that to be something that a builder would understand. So a specification needs to be put in place. What's the point of putting a specification in place if you're not accounting for the fact the building may change in terms of its layout later? Finance providers, if they're going to part with their trillions, frankly, of money sitting there doing nothing right now, would expect nothing less than all of those things to have been considered in advance. Moreover, they would want to see that there are a range of contractors within the marketplace that are accessing this. There might be specialists in certain areas, generalists that may look after the specialists. And ultimately, the way the industry works right now, there's self-certification. We've heard that much more robust ways of making sure contractors do the right thing. But who actually genuinely goes to site to check the work is of decent quality? How is that house actually performing? Is somebody monitoring the performance of all those houses to show those contractors and those designers have achieved what's been promised? And I'm going to put this line down the middle of this chart here because frankly right now, the way the industry is set up is the guys on the right doing their work are biased, the guys on the left are impartial. Self-certification by contractors saying their own work is wonderful can only work to a certain extent. And checking, say, 2% of all the work, as is required under PAS 2030, you could argue we're only going down one route here, and particularly as we move into the PAS 2035 era, if retrofit coordinators are also working for those contractors, which they're allowed to do, you've got to wonder really who's representing the householder here. I put that in very deliberately because the one thing that's going to get householders to do this at scale, and ultimately they're going to have to want to do it, they're going to want to buy the services here, we're going to have to consider trust at the heart of all of this. we can very well expect contractors of all flavours and designers and advisors, etc., to be doing their bit. But if they work within one particular model, trust has got to be at the heart of that. You might not think the heating engineer is acting in a biased fashion, but if they only install Worcester Bosch boilers because Worcester Bosch give them a good deal on volume purchases, they are biased. The householder is not getting choice. Householders sniff this, and they want to be able to buy something that's good for them, not what's best for the contractor. So what we've done at Retrofit Works, we've looked at what customers really want. They might not even necessarily be aware that this is a thing. I mean, there's a huge amount of contractors out there that have never even heard of the Green Homes Grant, for instance. So we've got a big job to do to try and make sure that everyone is very aware of all the things that are possible here. So once householders are aware, would they even trust the contractors to do the work properly? And contractors on the whole, I've not ever met anyone that deliberately wants to do a bad job, but they might not necessarily know that this is something that the way they've always done it is not right. If they have the capabilities, they need someone to help deliver on that as well. So there's a big gap between what they're capable of and what they're willing to do and what they really ought to be doing. And I want to introduce the concept of advocates here because we work very hard to support those organisations. So it can be local authorities, charities, not-for-profits wanting to do this kind of work. So ultimately, they need help to identify a supply chain. So Retrofit Works sits in the middle of that. It's owned by advocates and practitioners as a co-op. So effectively, we can bring to bear to all of these people a market within a local area. And we're starting to see a lot of interest from finance providers in the trust that we bring and the way that we can assure the quality of the work when it's completed. So I'll give you two particular examples here of how really we ought to be thinking about this market. These are two photos from my home retrofit 15 years ago or so. Gary on the left there is installing internal wall insulation. He's an electrician. And he's doing electrical rewiring and the internal wall insulation at the same time. It saved me about £2,000 because we didn't have to bury cables. We tacked them on the wall. We upgraded the cables so they could cope with the heat. And ultimately, that was a much more efficient way of getting the work done. Underfloor insulation on the right there, it's about £25 a square metre just to lift the floorboards, but about £5 a square metre to do the work there. So we need to be thinking very carefully about logistics. So it's not just saying we need to do a measure, we need to do as many as possible. We need to be ultimately saying, okay, systematically understanding what householders really need, getting contractors like Gary to understand that there are things that they could be doing at the same time, going with the grain of the industry, not necessarily starting with a massive program and expecting the contractor community to be excited and just jump on board with it. And our aspect of this here is giving everybody a whole house plan. If Gary, as an electrician, walked into a house to know that that house will need solid wall insulation at some point between now and 2040, then maybe they can gear up to do that, and the household appreciates it needs doing. This is about information, it's about knowledge. So on the one hand, we talk very excitedly about the fact that we need skills, and my version of Patrick's 250,000 new people is actually 400,000 people needed in the UK to hit our targets. But it's not just about skills. We need somebody like Gary there to be able to screw something to a wall repeatedly and do it well every time. But actually, on the whole, I think this is actually just about knowledge. And that's simpler to impart and easier to test, frankly. It's householders needing knowledge. It's building control officers, planners, energy advisors, and these contractors knowing that this is a thing. And I can assure you right now, most of them haven't got a clue this is even a thing. So the components of Retrofit Works and where we're at, where we've come to, I'll go over it briefly to show you really where I think we need to be focusing. It's getting all of those advocates there that represent a range of different types of people and what their motives might be to be getting access to a model that can support those householders in the way that they know they are best to do. So practitioners join Retrofit Works. They can't join unless they've been through a very stringent vetting process. We give them the tools in order to deliver on the work that they're able to do, which includes being human with them and developing a friendship and helping them and coaching them on jobs, not just giving them a toolkit. Ultimately, this is about making sure all of those people are within one place. And one thing that we're finding is, I know one of the big things that local authorities worry about is procurement. What we find with some of the advocate groups that we deal with, for instance, Citizens Advice Bureau in some parts of the UK are members of Retrofit Works. By owning a share of Retrofit Works, they have procured because they own the model. So we're able to then demonstrate value for money by going out to tender for each individual householder and getting 3 quotes for each piece of work. So that model works extremely well. So ultimately, householders, if we're going to start getting them to do this work at scale, we need to show that every home can be renovated to a high performance, not necessarily one go, but longer term. We need that vision. Every person that lives or works in a home must have access to the accurate knowledge. Every lead is pounced on based on a whole house plan, because you're empowering people to make decisions because they know it's the right thing to do. And the one thing we're dreadful at in general, exceptional execution and exceptional service levels. These are all things, that list there, each one of them gives us a challenge on how we train people within our industry to do those very well. To give you an example of what we've done in the past, the 1,300 homes that we carried out some retrofit on behalf of the Greater London Authority, ending at sort of the end of last year. We had a very wide range of measures that we could install, because it had a very wide range of local contractors doing work predominantly in their local authority areas. We had a very large number of vulnerable customers, and typically schemes like this might expect a very large dropout because of the vulnerabilities there. But because we have impartial retrofit coordinators working on behalf of those people, we're not asking the contractors to deal with the vulnerable customers. We had an extremely low dropout rate. And some of those vulnerable customers took 18 months to get to site, but we didn't give up, and we installed what they needed, not what the contractor wanted to pitch to them. And we've worked very hard since then with some very welcome funding from BEIS on the supply chain pilots that we're working on to deliver on that. And critically, what this is about is two funnels, and developing those funnels and pushing people through. Ultimately, this is about saying, on the left, existing companies in an area need to know this is a thing and they need help. But one thing you shouldn't be afraid of admitting is there may not be enough companies at all in your area that do this work right now. So this isn't about skills, but necessarily for just screwing stuff to a wall. This is getting companies to know what it means to be a company and creating new companies, incubation of new companies to get into this space. We may well have seen under the Green Homes Grant a large number of companies that have got PAS 2030 certification. My experience is that a large number of companies that already had it are splitting into several parts and falling apart, and then the new people starting up other companies to get certification. That's a natural progression, I understand, but it's not necessarily creating new people in the industry. So on the customer side, this has to be about data. It has to be a free detailed advice at the start, which actually costs money, whether we think it's free or not. But I just want to explain how we deal with the customer journey. And this, we've got some key stages here. Helping householders at the lowest cost possible to get to a point where they know that they can progress, giving them this whole house plan, put a building performance specification, we call it, in place, which pulls together all the things they might want to do, including the interior design, structural engineering, extensions, etc. And then moving to the point where all the permissions are put in place, tenders are put together, and we're overseeing the work through to the finish with an impartial retrofit coordinator. But we split that out into the advocates and the practitioner members, as you can see here, advocates on the left, practitioners on the right, with the central coordinating retrofit works team really driving the work all the way through that. And each of where you see a star there, that is a retrofit coordinator aspect there. My view is to get to net zero, we need around about 35,000 retrofit coordinators in the UK. At the moment, we've got around about 400. So we've got a lot of work to be done there. To give you an idea of what we're experiencing so far on the able to pay side of it, we're just going to delve into the Warmer Sussex project that we've got, but please do look at the websites, Warmer Sussex, Ecofurb and Cozy Homes Oxfordshire, where we're delivering this work right now. The challenge for us really has not been about making the offer and getting householders excited. The challenge has been getting the supply chain to be able to deliver on this. But what we do first of all is we enable our marketing to be done in a very smart way. So we use Parity Projects, Pathfinder software, and ultimately we're looking at every individual dwelling in an area, and we're modelling them already in advance before we've met any householders. So Oxfordshire, London and Sussex in their entirety, every single house has already been modelled. We can look at that strategically. We can target householders that may want to buy this particular service, and we can engage with them on that basis. Each individual householder can access their own house on what's called Plan Builder. They log onto their property, check their data, whether we've got the right data in there. They can edit it. The platform remodels their baseline immediately, and the householder can then look at the house, plug in different measures, see what the estimated savings will be, what the carbon savings will be, and what their budget would be. They can effectively limit their budget as well. And on that basis, then they are contacting the team. The team knows what their budget is, what they're looking to try and target. And then we can start going down the route of a whole house plan individually led by a retrofit coordinator. Show them what their bills are, show them where they can get to, including if any offsetting is needed at the end, they can get their carbon to zero by planting some trees, but their energy bill will still be there, obviously. And packaging it up in a way that suits them and their priorities. And the coordinator can't get away from this. They're pretty much they're sort of a heroic aspect of our industry, but they're pretty rare, like hen's teeth. They're energy competent, they've got design expertise, and they're commercially savvy to make this work. And they are a team. We've built a network here of people that are completely in contact with each other all the time on a Skype group, and they ask each other questions. And that is the way to do this. These are people that are peer reviewing each other's work right now. And Retrofit Works is a retrofit coordinator accreditation scheme now as well. So we check their competency, and we are overseen by Trustmark to do that work as well. So I just want to finish up with what that means nationally, Eric, if that's okay, just one more minute. I've been the author of a piece of work for the Construction Leadership Council, which sets out what it means for the nation to be able to do this work. And we've done this in order to give some Bays and others some support, really, and what the industry thinks it can deliver on to do this work. And critically, there's some really important interlocking components here. Hopefully some advice for anybody here that's trying to build this kind of machinery within their local area. You can't do retrofit piecemeal. You have to have all of these components to make it work. And we're advocating a national retrofit delivery agency that helps local authorities, combined authorities, to do this work at scale, because they'll need the help in the way that Retrofit Works helps its members to get to market, not in competition, not as a top-down obligation, but to try and help people to get them on that particular journey. Performance standards are critical in that. We need to demonstrate houses and how they've actually performed, that being fed back as content for training for everybody as part of it. And really, that's all I wanted to say right now, but I'll be obviously sticking around if there's any questions later on. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Russell. That's super. A huge amount of information there, as well as insight. And there were two words I suppose I drew out, or two terms I drew out particularly. One was the question of trust, which I think is really important in all of this. And the second thing I drew out particularly was the reference to the high quality of service and the importance of that. So we really appreciate your comments, and thank you also for connecting the local to the national.
Cool.